still like at 2 o'clock in the morning. When I'm sleeping, sometimes I keep the YouTube I was watching going on. So I woke up and then heard this stuff. And the story is about the Saichi, the Myokonin. And I like it. So let me just hear if I can. This is in Japanese. So he's talking about how to go across to the world that we live in, to go to the other shore or nirvana. So there's a transition. And there's a saying by Saichi Myokonin talking about it. I said it before, but it doesn't matter. It just show us the way how they live in their, you can call it imagination, but it's a religious experience. It's very difficult to explain. It's not the imagination, but the reality of the transition of using our mind and living to go beyond the constraint of the mind. And when you go beyond the constraint mind, it's, my explanation is, it's connecting to a heart, and in that space or dimension, not the brain and mind, but the heart, is when you find nirvana. So it's not after death like many religions may talk about. Even in this Shin Buddhism, people think of what happens after death, but the point here is that when you have this awakening or this religious experience, you realize that you don't need to die to go to nirvana. Death of yourself is death of your ego, the mind. We use the mind and always think that is the whole world we live in. But Saichi, the Myokonin, says if you have the funeral of your mind, meaning no mind, that's what I say about the samadhi state, is the same point, that the mind stops functioning. So it's a very calm and quiet mind, and there's a switch of lived in the mind to live with the heart, so to speak. The heart is the nature's way. And that's exactly, they don't call it nature's way, they do. But that's the subtlety. The transition happens when they have this Nembutsu, Namu Amida Butsu. You or me let go of myself, which is always what we have in the mind. But when the mind is totally quiet, and let the Amida to take over, which is the same as the way of nature to be realized, truly realized. That's the transition of death of ego, death of using mind, therefore no mind and no self. So here's the poem. I think it may pop up.
やっぱり行くんですよ。そうすると境を飛び越えていかなきゃならない。その境は何だしたら分別なんです。それでそういうことが非常に大事なんです。で、今まで案外こういう私が今お話申し。
So he's talking about the death of using our mind, corresponding to the transition when you call Amida to help by saying Namu Amida Butsu. It's very simple. It's simple and there's a switch, but that switch corresponds to the awakening that you're living in this world still, but when this transition happens by Amida Butsu, that's the anchoring process I mentioned, then you go to the other place, which is called the Pureland in Shin Buddhism's terminology, which is equating to nirvana, blissful sense. Something happens.
申し上げております。こういうことはあんまり私聞かないんですがね、前にも申しました。私大学が大谷大学で、
I don't know where it went. Let me see.
それはもう人間が考えた話です。そうじゃないです。最地が言うのは命の現実を言っておるんです。これ人間が考えた世界じゃないんです。
So he's saying that it's not the world that you think of, what this new space or different dimension is. You cannot think, is what he's saying.
大自然の考えって言ったらおかしいですがね、大自然が提示しておるその舞台がどうだということなんです。
So he's saying that 大自然 it's the nature is presenting that state is what this nirvana is or Pure Land is. So it is here now, not after death or not anything. It's a realization of that, which is basically the same as awakening. And then what happens?
それを最地は正確に、理解したと言いますか。でその理解の前段階にですね、前段階が一番大事なんで、その前段階がその分別の死、分別の輪済ませたということは、分別に済んで浄土にここ、
Okay, here it is coming up.
理解したと言いますか。でその理解の前段階にですね、前段階が一番大事なんで、その前段階がその分別の死、分別の臨終ということです。
So again, he's talking about the death of your mind, or the mind. Yeah, I think that's the only way I can explain it. It's a no mind state of samadhi.
で例えばこういう詩が
So he has the poem.
で私は臨終済んで葬式済んで
So what it said is that I have gone through death and funeral, and by going through funeral or death of myself,
浄土に心を澄ませても
then my mind transfer into the Pure Land.
ろうて南無阿弥陀仏を清におるよとこういうんです。
Therefore, I'm in that Pure Land, Nirvana, with Namu Amida Butsu. So it's so simple. We are using a mind, but as soon as I called Amida to help me by saying Namu Amida Butsu, I transfer to the Pure Land when I realize my mind is totally quiet and taken over by Amida's bow to transition, go into Nirvana, Pure Land, awakened state. So it's just that. And you won't believe it, but I have to say that I have experienced like that. And even when I'm talking, I can quiet my mind. In my case, I don't need to call Namu Amida Butsu. or Amida to help, but in essence, I can see that transition. I can feel it as a direct experience. So it's as simple as that. I don't know what else he says.
自分はですね、臨終済んで葬式も済んだっちゅうんです。
The end
これ
of
当
the
然ながらし
funeral.
て臨終済んで葬式済んでっていうことは、これは分別の臨終
It's
が
the
済んで、
death of the mind.
分別の葬式を済ませたと。
It's the
済ま
funeral
せたということは、
is gone,
分
finished.
別の臨終が済んで、まだ分別がこの分別の王を
Humbes
引
is
っ張って
mind,
ますの
the
ね。人
thinking.
間の心っていうのはそうですよね。
That's
どう
how
しても
the
分別
mind
取れないんですね。
functions. It's difficult to
そ
get
の
rid
葬式
of
を済
that
ませたっていうん
mind,
ですよ。
but it's already done,
そ
so
れ
the
でそこ
funeral
へ行った
is
だけで
done.
ね、都って言ったんですね。
And that's how the transition takes place. So Saichi is Myokonin again, and he do the carving to create the wooden sandal, and he lived 120 years ago or some such time in the remote part of Japan doing the job. Layman, not the authority, but he listened to the, let's say, the sermon of Shin Buddhism given by priests, and the priests talk about stories as described by Shinran, who started to found this Shin Buddhism, and they have those gathering like sermon in Christianity or any religion. But listening is listening, knowing is knowing, but actual transition, breakthrough, awakening happens with this Namu Amida Butsu, and that's what they say. But the saying and listening is not it. You need to, if you want to realize that, you have to have the direct experience. And that's the Pure Land, not after death, because the funeral is already over. Funeral of our mind. You still have the mind, but there's a connection to the nature's way, the heart, the origin. And when it happens, there's this eternally peaceful state. I call it eternal home. It's the nirvanic state or state of being as it is. So how can anyone to switch like that? It's the awakening from the mind, confinement, to the Pure Land, Nirvana. So you don't need to die and believe, but experience this transition. So this is Kusunoki, who is very close to Daisetsu. But Daisetsu is familiar with the Myokonin, and they have corresponded and worked together or lived together, and writing and sharing the story, which Daisetsu understand and Kusunoki understand. After Daisetsu passed away, he kept on lecturing and sharing the idea as academia, writing books as much as what the Daisetsu did, because they worked together or shared the idea. And the example that he was talking here, this Kusunoki was referring to one of the Daisetsu's book, describing the mysticism of religion in case of the Meister Eckhart and Saichi, talking the same idea of going into the other land, Nirvana. Master Eckhart in Christianity, he made lots of sermons, and I talked about him. But Saichi layman, not well educated, but left lots of 7,000, 10,000 poems of this nature that I talk about the death of mind, empty mind, but aware and experience Nirvana as he lives. I wanted to share this because I talk about it, but I often listen to the YouTube, and when I'm sleeping, I keep this computer keep going on, and then 2 o'clock or maybe 2:30 now, as I woke up, still going on, and it was on this point. And I felt so good, happy about listening. And they're only, this one has 3,000 views, posted 3 years ago. Not a huge number. That's what is amazing. Meaning that in Japan, this is in Japanese, not many people appreciate. And I have posted 1, 2, 3 comment. There are altogether 4 comments. So and I visited, say, 7 months ago, it says, and then I said like 1 year ago, I said something, and my comment is so long. Actually, I have one of them in English. So I don't know why I said this in English, but this is fairly long. I will leave. I just realized that, so I keep this in description if you're interested. Yeah, I'm saying like, let me go this quickly. This comment is for the English readers as translated by ChatGPT from my original writing, as I commented before this. So I had the Japanese and then translated 7 months ago. When we read Saichi's poem, we see that he perceives the death of discernment as the end of life. This indicates that he has realized the limits of discernment, which is to say, the act of separating things. The wisdom of non-discrimination understands that life and death are originally a set and not separate. In other words, well, that part I didn't mention much, but this is part of this. This is the whole description of this video. In other words, in the state of facts as they are, there is no place for emotions or intellect. Facts exist as they are or just as they are, yet emotions often contaminate them. Therefore, as human beings, we must not view things according to our convenience, which is ego, or calculations and hopes. But facts are facts. The foundation of human beings is nature, things as they are, naturally so, which for Saichi is synonymous with Amida Buddha. However, humans resist nature. Thus, they do not simply follow nature. They do not accept things as they are. For this reason, it is difficult to fundamentally accept facts. That is to say, nature, naturally so. Nature means accepting death or unavoidable facts as they are. Discernment can be useful in life, but it is useless when facing death. So discernment is the mind that I was talking about, but that's how, this is ChatGPT translated from my Japanese, so that's how ChatGPT translated. Therefore, one must live on the basis of non-discrimination and accept nature as it is. Living purely by discernment is impossible. Again, living purely by mind is impossible, but we often create barriers of discernment, the confinement of the mind. Originally, life and death are set, and that is the foundation using the mind that has created the boundaries. We must acquire the wisdom of non-discrimination or the discrimination of non-discrimination, which means understanding the essence of discernment or the mind so that the discernment does not become an obstacle, which is delusion. Saichi says, after life ends, the funeral is over, the mind is settled in the Pure Land, and I recite Namu Amida Butsu. That's the poem I was talking about. There are more I've written here, but I think that's good enough, and I'm going to go sleep into the Pure Land with a smile on my face. Maybe you think I'm crazy. Maybe our mind is crazy, and we can be awakened in the Pure Land. Namu Amida Butsu. Good night.